Hello, welcome to my unit plan. It's called the Roaring 20s and it's for 11th grade, and the content standards is 11.5. Students analyze the major political, social, economic, technological, and cultural developments of the 1920s. The big ideas of this unit are Ford's assembly line, automobiles, electricity, and other inventions of the 20s changed the American way of living. The passage of the 19th Amendment, as well as the flapper, helped change the image that women held in society. The Harlem Renaissance established a lasting impact on American society. The rise in radio and film established a new form of media and entertainment to the United States and the world. And Prohibition failed in theory, yet successfully showed our democratic process and the American way of life. This is my unit plan math for the Roaring 20s. One of the lessons is radio and film. And in this, students will participate in a simulation and demonstrate their understanding of the effect of radio and film on society through a discussion. The next one is the changing role of women. Students will be able to identify and explain the causes of the changing role of women in the 1920s. Then the Harlem Renaissance. Students will be able to evaluate and explain orally in a discussion and in writing using the guided notes the impact of the Harlem Renaissance on American culture. In technology and business. Students will be able to evaluate and explain in writing how the 5 technological changes influenced American life. And prohibition. Students will explain the causes of prohibition and how it affected American society. This is my lesson on the Harlem Renaissance. It is the lecture lesson. The goals and objectives that I just stated in the previous were that they will be able to define key vocabulary terms and demonstrate their understanding of the terms by answering critical thinking questions. And they will be able to evaluate and explain orally in a discussion and in writing using the guided notes the impact of the Harlem Renaissance on American culture. There are a couple Common Core standards. The driving historical question is how did the Harlem Renaissance influence American society? And I think that the best part of this lesson was my slideshow that I will try and show you. Talk about the Great Migration and Jim Crow laws, movers and shakers, where I also put different terms down at the bottom, and they're highlighted in red so they know they're important. And then I have a few pause for thought where they have critical thinking questions that they're required to answer on their guided notes worksheet. And so I'll give them a couple minutes and then we discuss it. So more with the different highlighted terms. Another pause for thought. Another pause for thought. Some more terms. And another pause for thought, which also includes a music from YouTube that I won't play right now. And then the final thought, which is using key vocabulary terms and figures from the lecture presentation, how would you define the Harlem Renaissance? What aspects of the Harlem Renaissance do you still see present in our culture today? If you look back at my driving historical question, how did the Harlem Renaissance influence American society? And I need to remove the double the. It connects with the final thought of the question that they're answering that they should have been able to receive from this lecture presentation. Here is their guided notes worksheet that includes vocabulary that was highlighted in red throughout the presentation. And then fill in the blanks, which I believe I had in the blue. And to make them pay attention to the lecture presentation, they have to fill that out as we go. Some visual aids and references, their critical thinking questions, and space to provide their answer, and basically the amount of lines is how much effort that I expect them to put into it. and then their last question. And the resources and the assessment. And my assessment is to discuss the slides through their questions and then through their guided notes. This is the reading lesson, and it's on technology and business. Goals and objectives are basically that they will identify 5 business and technological advancements and give 3 examples of how they affected American life for each. And they should be able to explain in writing how the technological changes influence American life and how it affects their own lives today, to connect it to their own lives and current times. The driving historical question: how did changes in business and new technologies influence American life? So that would be both in the past and today. I first have them think of technologies that they use today, and later they will be able to see how many came from the 1920s. I think the thing I am most proud of in this is the fact that I was able to create a mind map. So the students will read a few pages, and they will be able to pull out different technologies. I have some here on my sample mind map: the automobile, the airplane, electricity, credit, and advertising. And then for each, 3 things that those technologies or business ideas brought to us. So the automobile brought us the assembly line, paved roads, and urban sprawl. The airplane, mail carrying, weather forecasting, transportation. Electricity, appliances, cities, factories. Credit, installment plans, consumerism, bank loans, and advertising. Psychological slogans, luxury items, and brand names. And then to continue with that, the critical thinking questions to connect the map. They had to explain how did the changes in technology in the 1920s influence American life, and then how they affect American life today, which reflects back on what they thought of earlier in the class that they still use today, such as like automobiles, advertising, airplanes. Everything is still used today that was created in the 20s. My inquiry lesson plan is the changing role of women, where students will learn about the changing role of women. They'll be able to explain the 19th Amendment. They'll be able to evaluate and explain the significance of the flapper. And they'll be able to identify and explain the causes of the changing role of women in the 1920s. The driving historical question is what influenced the changing role of women in the 1920s. And then they have their 3 primary sources. These documents I took off of the government website. But the primary sources, this first one is a magazine article that was written by someone that was defined as a flapper, and it just kind of explains their lifestyle throughout the article. The next one is the actual amendment giving women the right to vote. And then the last one, which I think is the most interesting because they will really have to give their own opinion, is this Life magazine cover of the flappers basically gambling. It's titled The Faded Blonde. It shows her dressed in a short dress, her stockings are showing, she's wearing heels, she's gambling, she's hanging out with men, the men are watching her do this. So it really portrays a good image of what the flapper image was to an outside perspective, and the article explains what the flapper was from a flapper's perspective, so they can see everything and see how those change the role of women. My discussion lesson plan was on prohibition. The goals were to analyze graphs and charts to determine the success. They'll be able to identify and explain the causes of it, and they will examine the passage of the 18th Amendment to understand and discuss how prohibition affected American society. This one actually has a lot of Common Core standards in it. And the driving historical question was, how did prohibition affect American society? And here is the prohibition document. This is something that I created in the past and kind of decided I liked it for this situation as well. The students in pairs would use websites that I provided, so they're not Wikipedia, they're good sources, answering these questions together. What is prohibition? What is the Anti-Saloon League? What's the goal of the Women's Christian Temperance? Some of the reasons. There's some charts to analyze. And then another website about organized crime. What is the speakeasy? The massacre? Al Capone? When did it end? And some more graphs that kind of show the alcohol consumption rates, murder rates, different rates that actually increased during the time of Prohibition, when the effect was to have the opposite of that occur, so students really understand and see what actually went on during Prohibition, during a time when they shouldn't have been doing these things, how much they actually did. And then there's a discussion based on that Weber size. It's called a Weber size. The next day there is a discussion to determine if Prohibition was successful, and it can also be a debate based on whether or not the students agree or disagree that Prohibition was successful, and then they have to actually cite those sources to explain why they think the way they do. My simulation lesson plan is on radio and film, which was a little difficult. I had to come up with it myself because Prohibition was the only thing there's any interactives online for. Their goal was to understand how radio and film impacted society and got the spread of messages, media out quicker. So their simulation is actually, they split into 3 groups. The first group gets handed a picture of a famous actor or actress of the 20s, or it can really be a picture of anything. I chose Mary Pickford right here. The first person looks at the image, writes down 10 descriptive words, passes the image. The next person does that down the line while it's timed by the teacher. Once that group is done, the next group has 2 broadcasters that announce these 10 descriptive words to their audience, which is the rest of the group, and the teacher records how long it takes for the student to say what the descriptive words are, and for everyone in the group to complete the writing down the 10 that they heard from the broadcasters. And then the next group, the final group, gets the image portrayed, and then all of them write down 10 descriptive words, and that gets timed. And the goal is to show that things like movie and radio are quicker than the past. The first one represents the past, where messages were slowly sent across the country, if they made it there at all. And then the second one shows radio and how messages can quickly be received from anywhere. And then the third one is also the visual representation, such as the movies and films, and how quickly that can go to people as well. So the timing of them shows how quick it was. Walking into the class, however, the students don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and then it's afterwards that they can evaluate what went on and decide and discuss which one was which, and then how it impacted society. For the culminating project, I decided, based on experience I have in the classroom right now and the availability of students, a lot of my students don't even own a computer or a cell phone or anything, so I decided to go a little simpler, and they can do a PowerPoint, or they can draw it. That's only an option though if they're not able to create a PowerPoint due to lack of technology. You can pick any topic that was already discussed, or they can have their own new topic that still relates to the 20s. I wanted students to be creative with their presentations, but I also set guidelines. Has to have at least 7 slides, no grammatical and spelling errors, at least 3 images, at least 4 sources that are scholarly. Students will be presenting this to the class, so they will be able to either teach the class something new that they're interested, or show me something that they already learned from something we already did, which kind of ties it together. The overall goal of this unit was for students to not only learn about the 20s, but understand that the past is still connected to our present day, which was my goal in each of the lessons that I did. And that's it. Thank you.